Patriots. Welcome back to another episode of Appalachistan Prepper with me, your host, Ocor 1057. Something just don't feel right. Oh my God, how'd that get on my head? That's better. Hoorah! Let's get into this. What we're going to talk to y'all today about is one of the greatest tragedies in American military history, and that is ACU camouflage. Now, if some of you guys like it, go ahead and wear it. I ain't going to hate on you. But the truth of the matter is, this stuff sucks, and everybody knows it. However, there is tons and tons of this gear out there on the market, and it's definitely serviceable. We got a big old mountain of ACU stuff here, and we're going to try to make it more serviceable. Now, you can wear it this way. You know, I know guys pulled entire deployments overseas wearing ACUs. I've heard them talk about it on their podcast and so forth, and it is what it is. But the one thing about ACU is if you go to your flea markets or anywhere around, they got secondhand stuff or whatever, they just about give you this stuff because ain't nobody wanting it. But we're going to try to figure out how to make it more serviceable. This channel is geared toward the entry-level prepper or people on a real tight budget. Like I say down here in Appalachistan, sometimes you got to spread that jelly pretty thin on toast to get you by. And if you're willing to do put a little sweat into it, a little brain work, you might be able to pick you up some ACU gear and turn it into a pretty good kit. But you're going to have to do a little work. It ain't going to be, just walk out of the store and you're good to go. You're going to have to do a little work to it. And what we're going to do today, we're going to turn this stuff from this into this. Now, everybody's got their own opinions, I reckon. If you like this stuff, more power to you. But this used to be this. And I'm going to show you how we do this in case you want to do it. You save you a little money. As you can see, I've got a ton of this stuff here. I buy it when I find it, if the price is right, and just a little bit of effort on your part. You can go from this crap to something that's definitely serviceable and probably blends in better anywhere you go except maybe a gravel pit. So with that, I'm going to talk to you about the process. I did not develop this. I learned it off YouTube. And I felt like it would be good to include this in our channel because we're definitely looking to help folks get kitted up as economically as possible. I mean, if you got unlimited funds, you don't need to watch this. But if you're a dad and you got a couple of little boys that need some gear, trying to raise them up to be good American patriots, and you're buying everything, duplicating it 3 or 4 times so everybody's got the right kind of gear. This may be a benefit to you. So we're going to share how we do it. I'm going to kind of talk through my learning curve on it, and just so you have a little background. And here's the thing about it: you're going to have varied results. Everybody's going to do their process a little different, and you're going to get maybe a little darker or a little lighter. But this is something, once you do it a few times, maybe do a couple of test pouches, something small till you kind of get the hang of it, then you can move on into the bigger items and develop your own technique to get what you want that works for you. Now, this ACU stuff and its cousin, this is I don't know if you can tell exactly on this pouch, but it's the Air Force ABU. It's probably one of the greatest tragedies in American military history. I really personally feel somebody needs to be doing an investigation on this up there in Congress and find out who made the decision to spend the money for this crap. Now, we all know, if you're into the prepper movement whatsoever, they're now have went to the ACP, the OCP, and I think the Air Force has followed suit with what the Army's wearing. Of course, the Marine Corps wears MARPAT, which is its own animal. But the point being is, there's a lot of this gear out there, and nobody really don't want it. And the military has emptied their warehouses, to the best of my knowledge, of this stuff, and you can get quite a bargain on it. I mean, I'm seeing virtually brand new ammo pouches for. I see them at flea markets for a dollar a pouch now. Uh, it's not no Gucci Gear brand. It's just GI, but it's definitely serviceable, and they're unused. A lot of them are just unused, so it's definitely a bargain, and you can use it the way it comes. I mean, it's okay to do that, but me being the way I am, I just I saw a guy die in it. I'm reluctant to mention names of other YouTubers or the podcast I listen to, because I don't know if that's really proper internet etiquette. We definitely have guys that we watch and learn from, and something in me would like to name them off, and I'm just simply not quite sure if that's really the polite way to do that. But I'm not by no means going to take credit for inventing this process. I learned it off YouTube. I tell you where I learned it, but I just don't know how that works, if that's the right thing to do or not. But we're not going to take credit for it. But I have, after dying quite a bit of this stuff, I have developed some modifications to the process that I learned originally. So what you got here, you got your standard ACU. Now you can dye the clothing, and I've done that, and it's fine, man. But the ACU, the trousers, kind of got a bad problem with the crotch ripping out, and some of that stuff, it's got the treatment on it, the anti-insect treatment, and when you pull it out of your dye, instead of being a nice olive drab green, you will find it's purple, and it varies from one batch to the next. Other YouTubers have encountered the same problem, and I just want to make you aware of that. You may stick an item down in your dye bath, and when you pull it back out, it's going to dry and it's going to be purple. So if you're like me and you got a hippie girlfriend, you give her the purple stuff, makes her happy. She thinks you did it just especially for her. Just keep your mouth shut, guys, and let her think that. And at least you don't got to throw them away. She can wear them down there to the coffee shop, getting her cappuccino, whatever, and it's all good. So anyhow, we got the ACU pattern. Now the first attempt I made at this, they used apple green RIT dye. So here you got ACU boonie hat, and if you just dye it with nothing but the apple green RIT dye, you're gonna get something like this. So this is just, like I said, just straight out of the bottle. Follow the process on the bottle, and you get this. Now it looks pretty bright, a little bit loud, a little too green maybe, but in reality, if you take it out, you can see the foliage around me here. It actually blends very well. So if you want to just go straight apple green, you may feel like it's like just too much, but when you get out in the woods and the leaves, it really does blend in very, very well. I've took pictures of it just for my own comparisons and stuff, and I reiterate it. It looks kind of loud just standing around wearing it, or out around you in your yard, but if you get out in the bushes and stuff, it actually blends in pretty good. Now what I've done, I wanted a lot of the web gear. I mean, you can dye the pouches, you can dye the clothing. There's a little different process for the web gear versus just the clothing. I pretty much just use the same process for both types of material. One is the addition of some salt and vinegar, and you pretty much, whatever you stick in there is going to take color. Like I said, it may come out purple. Usually the web gear don't come out purple, but the ACU tops, ACU bottoms, we're going to dye this. We're going to dye this nasty looking boonie hat today and see what we get. It may come out purple. I don't know, because I'm not sure if it's had the treatment or not. But I wanted something that was a little closer to the Alice gear type olive drab. So I did a little modification to the dye and come up with a blend, and I get something like this. So basically, you take, you end up with it, you start out with that, and you can end up with this, the first aid pouch. So you can go from this to this with straight apple green RIT dye liquid. And if that works for you, great. I wanted something a little darker, just personal preference. So I did a little blend of the dye, and we're going to talk about that when we get to that spot in the video. But I went from this to this. So we're going to talk about that process, and we're going to dye this big mountain of stuff. I'm not going to re-dye this stuff, but all this right here, I got a tap panel here. Looks like it's brand new. We're going to dye it. I got canteen cover, general purpose pouch, got a first aid IFAK pouch, 3 mag shingle, got some radio pouches. We're going to dye all this stuff today and see what we get. And hopefully it'll come out very close to this shade, maybe a little lighter or something. And, you know, it's a roll of the dice. It really is. So now, you know, the Marine Corps is going to the Coyote Brown. They went to that. I can live with this. Marine Corps gear is harder to find than all this ACU stuff. But, you know, I'm not dyeing no Coyote Brown stuff. I'm simply going to talk about how to dye this ACU stuff in order to make it more serviceable, make it more blend in with your other gear. And what we're going to do, I'm going to talk about the process real quick, and then we're going to cut away, and we're going to go mix this up and get the dye bath ready. And then we're going to move it back outside to a place I got where I usually do this. And when we get it in the dye bath, we'll discuss, you know, you kind of got to stir it for a little while and everything. But then we'll hang it up dry, and then we'll come back to it after it dries. Obviously, we all know that stuff dries, or it dries, it becomes a little bit lighter than when it's wet. So, like I said, this is not a scientific process. It's more of a roll of the dice, but you can get close. So, but we definitely felt it was worth including on the channel because it gives you a way to take bargain gear and make it more serviceable. So what you're going to have, you're going to need 1 bottle of RIT green apple dye. You're going to need to boil 3 gallons of water and add a half a cup of white vinegar and a half a cup of salt. Now, vinegar and the salt helps with the nylon blend. It helps the nylon take the color. Now, I will say this before we even get into it. The plastic on these is not going to change color. It's going to remain gray. So, you know, be prepared for that. What you want to do as you're boiling your water to dump in I dye in a 5-gallon bucket, so I just boil up 3 gallons of water. When I get it boiling, I've already added a half a cup of vinegar, white vinegar, and a half a cup of salt into the bucket, and I just pour the boiling water in on a 5-gallon bucket, and that gives you a little bit of room because when you add your stuff you're dyeing, it's going to push that water level up. But what you want to do, though, is you want to get the items you're going to dye. You need them to be wet before you dunk them in your dye bath. So boil 3 gallons of water, put a bottle of green apple RIT dye in that bucket, in a bucket, add a half a cup of white vinegar, half a cup of salt. When you get that 3 gallons of water boiling, just pour that in the bucket that you have your dye and your salt and your vinegar in. And, you know, do it where you want to do it, but I recommend getting it outdoors somewhere. So when you start putting this stuff in it and stuffing it down with the stick and stirring it, if it comes out of your bucket a little bit, you ain't gonna have domestic dispute there. So be advised, protect yourself, men, and do not put these in the dryer. Just let them hang till they dry. Friendly advice. But after you get them in the dye bath, you got to kind of stir them around for 15, 20 minutes. Just agitate it. You don't got to sit there and stir it. Just poke it around with the stick and you know, move it around. And you know, you can pull them up with a stick and look at them. And if it's about the shade you want, remember it's going to dry a little lighter. If you like what you're seeing, pull it out. The longer you leave it in there, the more dye it's going to take. So you're going to have to do a little judgment on your own part, and you don't really know what the end result's going to be till they actually dry, but you can get it pretty close. Now, the one thing about it is when you do pull these items out of the dye bath, you need to plunge them into a cold bucket of water. So you're going to need 2 5-gallon buckets, one with cold water, the other with your dye solution in it. And when you're ready to remove them from the dye solution, just transfer them over to that cold water bucket and stir them around. That cold water helps set the dye so it don't wash out and fade out at a later date. That's my understanding of it. And when, after you've stirred around in that bucket, the cold water bucket for, 15, 20 minutes, whatever, where they've basically are not warm no more like they came out of the boiling water, just hang them up, clothesline, or lay them on a big rock or on the edge of you, on the front of your tractor, or hang them on your four-wheeler, whatever you want to do, but get them out there where the sun can get to them and get them dry. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to cut away. We're going to go mix up the dye, get the water boiling, and we're going to move it to outside location. And we're not going to film any of that because it's just boiling water. I don't know anybody wants to watch people boil water. But when we get everything ready, we're going to move outside. We're going to throw all this stuff in. We're going to stir it around, look at it. And when I'm happy with what I see, we're going to pull it out, put it in the cold water. Then we're going to pull it out and lay it out to dry. And then we'll come back to it later this afternoon when it may not be 100% dry, but it's going to be pretty close. And we'll be able to see what the end result is. And like I said, we included this. We're not taking credit for it, although I'm the only guy that I've seen that in order to get let me back up. In order to get this, you have to add a small amount of black dye. And I'll tell you how much I'm adding to this particular process. But I took black liquid red dye and add a very small amount to the straight out of the bottle green apple dye. And that, it gives you quite a bit darker, but you can overdo the black, man, so you got to be careful. And so we're going to see what we get. I mean, maybe it'll be very good. Maybe I'll be disappointed, but we'll see you out on the other side of getting the water boiled, and let's see what we get, man. While we're waiting on the water to boil, I may have neglected to tell you about a few things you want to do to prep your material you're going to be dyeing. What you want to do is you need to get them wet. So I've just got all that stuff that was on the table I showed you earlier, stuff down this bucket, soaking up some water. And what I wanted to make mention, I didn't do it earlier, is your molly straps on the back. You want to unsnap everything that you can. Let me find a different pouch. Got a bunch of radio pouches. Let's see here. Like this IFAC pouch, you want to open them up. Don't leave the lid shut. And probably be okay to leave them buttoned like that, but you don't want to weave it behind your straps because you want everything as accessible to the dye as possible. So while you're waiting on your water to boil to add and create your dye mixture, go ahead and pre-soak whatever you're dyeing. It needs to be wet. It'll help it take the dye more uniformly. And just whenever it's wet, so use some judgment. Depends on what you're going to be dyeing, but I wanted to make mention that you do need to have what you're going to be dyeing needs to be wet, and I recommend you open up all the flaps, lift up all the Velcro. Obviously Velcro is going to stick back to itself, but your any buckles and snaps and stuff, just have that all open, and that way when you agitate it, when it's in the dye solution, it's not going to be hindered absorbing dye because it's tight down behind a molly webbing or something of that nature. So we'll go ahead and cut back. I just want to insert this because I don't think I mentioned it in the first part of the video, but just get your items wet and open up all the flaps, unsnap all the snaps, and just have it wide open as you can. That'll help you get a better dye job. So we'll be back in just a little bit. Hello Patriots, welcome back. We've got our dye solution all boiled and transferred outside. Gonna be a little movement on the camera so we can show you what we're doing here. But she can come over. In this bucket we have 3 gallons of water that's basically boiling. And we got 1 bottle of the green apple, or apple green, whichever it is, red dye, and 3 tablespoons of red black dye in this solution. I'm just stirring it up. You got salt, half a cup of salt, half a cup of vinegar, 3 teaspoons of Rit black dye in 1 bottle of, it's apple green or green apple. And over here in the other bucket that you saw earlier, we've got this stuff wetted down, so we're gonna stick it in there and see what happens. You want to be kind of quick. You don't want to like be halfway through and you go take a nap. Get your stuff in the bucket. And like I say, there's going to be, every batch is going to be just a little bit different because of what we're doing. And get that cold water out as much as we can so it don't chill our dye bath. Get that down in there. Old bring hat. I may have too much material too, because the more stuff you got in there, there's only so much dye to go around, so we might end up with a little lighter, a little darker. So there's just all kinds of variables you're gonna have to contend with. But just basically push her down in there, get all your straps and stuff. Get it down in there. Try to hold it beneath the surface. Some guys, they'll lay a weight of some sort. To hold that stuff down. But basically you manipulate it, agitate it. Try to keep it beneath the surface as much as possible, obviously. There, that's pretty good. There's one little bit right there. There we go. Well, still got a strap up, but anyway, it'll be all right. I usually just hold everything beneath the surface initially, and then after a certain, whenever it kind of feels right, just stir it around, agitate it, and you try to work it dye into all the crevices. And it takes a little while to actually take hold in your fabric, so just be patient and stir it around. And you want to mix your dye and your salt and your vinegar, kind of mix it a little bit, before you start adding your material. And even if you get quite a bit lighter shade with this, it always works out good. It's nice if your camouflage pattern will actually show through. You don't want just a solid green, which you may get, but then again you may get a really cool 2-tone green digital camo pattern. And like I said, one thing, it's kind of sad that the plastic won't take any of the dye, so you're going to have gray buckles regardless what shade of green you get on the dye job. So, but it's still better than factory ACU. So basically that's it. Now we're not going to sit here for 15 or 20 minutes filming. I'm just going to stand here and agitate this stuff around, tend to it a little bit. You don't want to, you can weight it down and walk away and leave it for hours if you choose to do that. I never did. I didn't have that much patience. I always want to see what I'm going to get, so I just keep messing with it till it starts looking the way I want it to look. And I try to imagine it a little bit lighter, because that's what it's going to be when it dries. And once I see it looking that way, I transfer it over to the cold rinse. So we'll go ahead and cut, Patriots. We ain't going to make you stand here, and I'm not going to try to think of stuff to say for 15 or 20 minutes. I'm going to tend to this, agitate it, stir it, and we get ready for the next step. We'll be back. Stand by. Hey Patriots, welcome back. We're getting down to the last roundup on this. I've been sitting here kind of tending this bucket of dye with the material in it, stirring it, squishing it around, raising it up, looking at it, just kind of keeping it agitated. Been probably about 25 minutes, maybe something like that. We didn't time it, just it's going to depend on if you like what you see. I don't know if you can get a shot down in this bucket or not. So it's kind of what it looks like when you're stirring it around. Don't get impatient. It takes a few minutes for the dye to start actually penetrating the fabric. So I'm gonna get this stuff out and put it down in the cool water, and we're gonna lay it out on this pallet and let you look at it, and we'll come back later this afternoon when it's dry, and we'll see what we got. So let's get her out of the bucket and see what it looks like. So as you can tell, there's quite a bit of difference than what it was prior to the going in the dye solution. But all you gotta do is just kind of shake it out a little bit. You don't want to get too much of dye water in your bath. I think it's going to be a good batch. It looks plenty green enough, and the camouflage pattern is still showing through. I think that's pretty good. Even if it went all green, dark green, I'd been satisfied. It's still better than ACU. There's the tap panel. I was curious how that was going to turn out. Looks pretty good. Down in there. Uh-oh. Looks like the boonie hat didn't turn out purple. They have to buy you a purple one, Misty. She's wanting that purple boonie hat pretty bad. We actually had quite a bit of stuff in here for the size of the container that we had, so it's important that you do agitate. You can overdo it. I mean, if you got a lot of material, it's going to take a lot of dye to actually, dye it. There's only so much dye in this solution. The water's going to look black, but that doesn't mean that, all the dye is going to penetrate the fabric. So, you can actually put too many items in the amount of solution that you have. So you want to kind of be cognizant of that. Get this thing here. You can actually put too much in for the amount of dye that you have. So, get all you can get out of it, but bear in mind you can get in a situation where you just don't have enough dye to dye the amount of items you're wanting to dye, and you'll probably come out with a lighter shade than you were anticipating. I think that's it. I don't know that. Oh, that's hot. I think that's it. You squish them down in this cold water, and that helps the dye to set into the fabric so it won't fade it later. I guess if you just let it dry, it's not as resilient. So you kind of need to, I guess it'd be like quenching metal if you were putting a temper in a knife or something, or a chisel. You give that quick oil quench, and this is probably kind of similar situation as that. But all the stuff you read about dyeing will tell you to do that. You don't gotta you don't have to leave it in there a very long time. Just kind of agitate it around. You can see it's holding color really good. I think this is going to be a good batch. That's just a buckle. That's what I was feeling. Came out of that taps panel. So we'll cool these off a little bit. All right, let's lay them out and see what it looks like. I did a bunch of the radio pouches because I had them, and here's a shingle. There's the boonie hat. Canteen pouch. Another radio pouch. Another radio pouch. Here's a tap panel. think that looks pretty good. Like I said, it's important you get all the flaps and snaps opened up so the dye can penetrate. So there you have it, Patriots. We'll leave these dry, come back a little later and see what we end up with, and I'll get some more of the ACU stuff out that hasn't been dyed. I'll lay it there so you can see the before and after. But I think it was a good batch. It's good and green, still light enough that you can see the camo pattern from the original ACU showing through. And unless something goes terribly wrong, I'm gonna call this a good batch, great success. So we'll cut away and let this dry, and we'll come back a little later this afternoon and wrap this video up. So we'll see you in a little bit. Hey Patriots, welcome back. We let this stuff lay in the sun all day. The evening shade has come over from the mountain behind me. It's pretty well dry, and here's the tap panel. Look what a lovely shade of green that turned out. Very happy with that. Both sides, straps. Very, very happy with how this turned out. I think that little bit of 3 tablespoons of black dye got us just about the right color. Here's the ammo pouches. See a little bit of digital cam. Still showing the camouflage pattern. For comparison, here's the one we dyed. Here's the exact same pouch, canteen pouch. So it used to look like this, now it looks like this. So that's to me, it's a great improvement. Here's the IFAC pouch we dyed. Here's what it looked like this morning. So as you can see, if you're willing to put a little effort into it, you can take that ugly ACU camo and make it a really good shade of green. You can make it a little darker, you can make it a little lighter. You got a little control over it. So it does dye well. Biggest complaint I have is the buckles, but you know, it's not that bad. You can live with it. But say when you buy the stuff for $1 a pouch places, get one that's good and serviceable, dump your little dye on it. I think it's well worth the effort. There's a shingle. Still see the ACU pattern through it. So I'm very, very happy with this batch. Here's the boonie hat. You can tell it dyed just a little bit different color than this, and it's just a difference in the material. I've dyed complete sets of ACUs before, and they come out pretty similar to that. But anyway, there you have it. If you can get some ACU camouflage, bargain basement prices, get you a couple bottles of dye, do a little bit of mojo on it, you can turn it into some really good looking stuff. So with that, we're gonna get out of here. This old Core 1057 saying, hey, maximum effective range of excuse 0 meters. So don't come down to help me fight off the godless communist hordes running around through the mountains with the blue helmets on, trying to undo everything generations and generations of hard-working American fighting men have allowed us to have. Don't show up to the revolution with this. But if you do, we'll let you help anyway. But just don't do it, man. You know, when you can have this, why would you want that? So don't be that guy. Semper Fi. That means always faithful. That means people around you can count on you. Make sure you're that guy. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. And always, always demand liberty.